Oh my God. Oh my God.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America.
The story of Emmett Till and his mother is a story of a family's promise and loss and a nation's reckoning with hate, violence, and abuse of power. It's a story that was seared into our memory and our conscience, the nation's conscience, when Mrs. Till insisted that an open casket for her murdered and maimed 14-year-old son. She said, "Let the people see what I've seen." The reason the world saw what she saw was because of another hero in this story, the black press. Jet Magazine, the Chicago Defender, and other black radio and newspapers were unflinching and brave in making sure America saw what she saw. Ida B. Wells once said, and I quote, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon the wrongs."
Turning the light of truth upon the wrongs. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
First things first.
First things first, it's the DU General, Money B. I'ma put you up on the schedule, 6 to 9, 8 weekdays, not to unsettle you. Let's go. We got a lot to talk about, so much to pedal through. Unapologetically progressive. Tune to KBLA 1580 to get the mess. We're your ancestors' favorite radio station. First black on talk radio, left side of the nation. Me and Dominique DePrima go way back. Tag Smiley making sure the station stays black. Discussing all the issues in our community. We're hosted black and brown and others find unity. So let's talk about it. Maybe we can improve it. Digital underground, always down with the move. So we tune in to First Things First with the Queen of Black Talk Radio, Dominique DePrima. Go sis.
First things first.
KBLA Talk 1580. Good morning and God bless. I'm Dominique DePrima. This show is First Things First, and my first thing every single day, giving thanks, giving praises, asking for blessings from God, asking for the blessings of the elders, the ancestors, the community. Let's go, let's go. We got a lot to talk about and a lot going on around here as usual. You know how we do. Hour one, we look to the local, sweep around our own front door, elevate what's good. Hour two, we look at national, international, beyond. In the third hour, we do a deep dive with a person or persons of interest. Today, we will be talking with Dr. Bill Relaford, MD. He's the founder of the Black Barbershop and the Relaford Foot and Ankle Institute, saving people's, specifically Black people's, limbs. And looking forward to talking with him as always. We'll also be joined by Pastor Q from the Church Without Walls. We got a big announcement today and looking forward to talking with him. And you, of course, you know the deal. It is freestyle phones all day on a Friday, 800-920-1580. Call me. Let's talk about it. Bring it up. If it is of interest to you, it's probably of interest to the community. And I love to hear what you're liking, what you're not liking, what you would like to hear more of. Always on this show, I'm open to such as that, and I appreciate you stepping up and stepping in. We are hearing a lot of great stories about these community spaces. At the same time, community spaces are fighting for their life. That Compton Community Garden looks like has been saved, that they are buying the property, as I mentioned before, and that's a happy story because it was a tale of gentrification where a community resource was shutting down. We also talked with you about the Heart Department. They joined us about a week ago and they have amped up their 911 meter because apparently it looks like there could be a competitive bid coming in to take them out of that space. So check them out, the Heart Department on Instagram. They have a GoFundMe. Anything you can kick in. This is a community event space in downtown LA, Black curated, owned and operated as a business, and they want to be able to stay where they are. And that is in danger of not happening, even though they've lined up the grants and stuff. Sometimes those grants take a minute to come in, and in the meantime, you can perish. So if the community can step up, we've heard the similar stories about Plant Chica, another, BIPOC owned and operated space that is facing extinction, and you can find them on Instagram as well under Plant Chica. Here's the thing. We, the KBLA delegation, those of us who are change makers, that are moving things in our own lives, that some have resources. If you have a lot or a little, doesn't matter if you're Jay and Beyonce with a $200 million home that you just snapped up, or you're a working class person. It makes a difference for us to have these spaces, and I think we are in that moment, the crossroads. I've lived through this before in San Francisco, where I come from, where our Black population in a city seems to be in peril as gentrification and encroachment on our nice things picks up speed, accelerates. Post-pandemic, I do see that happening. It was already in effect before we went into the COVID era, if you will. But in my own community, my own block and the surrounding areas, I've seen houses being flipped. Why is it that, I've noticed gentrifiers, or especially speculators who come in, buy a house from a family whose loved one has died, or someone that's trying to move out to the Inland Empire or whatever they're doing, buy a house, fix it up, and then flip it, and it invariably goes to a less melanated family, right? So then they always have these, when they flip it, they have the same numbers. They're like these big, on the address, these big numbers that, I don't know, for me, those numbers are like the kiss of gentrification, right? Because I see the numbers, and next thing I know, there's no more Black people in that house. If you live in the community anywhere in South LA, you know what I mean. There are these big, this is some kind of big font that says, Black people, you can no longer afford this house. So it's really important for us to stand up for spaces like the Heart Department, like the Compton Community Garden, and to patronize some of these Black businesses. As we go into our Memorial Day weekend and we're spending money on this, that, and the third, as we like to say, let's at least make sure that the this and that, and maybe even the third, are recycling Black dollars. Now, of course, some things, sometimes you got to go to Target, and I get that. But if you can find it from a Black business, I think it's definitely worth a try. And that's part of our community standing our ground against the aspect of development that pushes us out. I'm here for upgrading our streets, our roads, our parks, our lighting system. I'm here for bringing in businesses, nice restaurants and quality grocery stores. The reason that we bristle at that is because so many times it's a precursor to our being pushed out. And I think it's important to remember that we do vote with our dollars. We have a fair amount of spending power, even though we might feel like we never have enough. We have a fair amount of spending power. And so if you can donate to a Plant Chica or a Heart Department, or, hey, go to the KBLA store and buy some of our merch. This supporting Black businesses in that way. I think it's KBLA.store. We have all kinds of stuff. That's how you keep Black businesses afloat, and that's how we make sure they stay in our community. We do appreciate you telling a friend to download our app, KBLA 1580, wherever you get your apps. We do appreciate you liking and subscribing to us. I'm broadcasting right now on YouTube, KBLA 1580. That's the same on all of the socials that you follow, like, and subscribe. All of that stuff makes a difference for Black businesses, for the African American presence in our communities, the ability for us to stay regardless. All of that comes down to recycling Black dollars. So I guess that's my what's good message in on this Friday. And there's a lot of great Black businesses that you can support, or community businesses, or socially innovative businesses. Tell you about a new indoor farm in the city of Compton. That's good. That's next on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
The pandemic may be over, but many Angelinos could be at risk of losing the place they call home. It's important to know your rights as a residential renter in the city of LA. Did you know eviction protection still exists for unpaid COVID-19 rental debt that was due before March 31st, 2023? And that you have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice, also known as an unlawful detainer. Learn more about your rental rights at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
Hi, I'm Dominique DePrima. At the Amundsen Theater, now through June 25th, Norm Lewis stars in A Soldier's Play, directed by Kenny Leone. Charles Fuller's Pulitzer Prize-winning drama and Tony Award-winning play, A Soldier's Play, is now on stage. In 1944, on a Louisiana Army base, a Black sergeant is murdered, triggering a gripping barrage of questions about sacrifice, service, and identity in America. I'm looking forward to seeing the show myself. Get your tickets at amundsentheater.org. That's amundsentheater.org.
At Lowe's, we're always bringing pros more ways to save. Right now, buy a select Metabo HPT cordless nailer and get a 36-volt 2.5 amp-hour battery free, a $139.99 value. And as a Lowe's MVP, buy select Owens Corning shingles and earn 2 times the bonus points per dollar. Lowe's knows pros. Valid 5/11 through 7/12. While supplies last. Selection varies by location. U.S. only. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Valid through 6/1. Subject to change.
King C. Gillette is the modern man's answer to their facial hair. With a complete set of precision tools, the King C. Gillette line offers the perfect fit for your facial hairstyle. Want to try something great? Try the Style Master, the quintessential styling tool that every man needs to craft their style. It's a waterproof, cordless trimmer with a long-lasting 4-directional blade. It's extremely versatile and designed to edge, trim, and stubble in 4 directions on any hair length. Master your style with King C. Gillette.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DePrima right now.
Right now, happy to bring into the mix my partner in politics for today. He is the pastor over the Rose Church Without Walls, and some folks call it the Street Church. He's an activist. He's on, so many boards and a member of many different organizations. He's also an artist, a hip-hop artist in his own right, but dedicating most of his time right now to helping folks on Skid Row and helping folks create justice with his organization, Creating Justice. Yes. Pastor Q, good morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Man, I'm good.
Big just days, running. Big week for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, this morning here, and then at 9 o'clock we have a press conference at our Peace and Healing Center, and then the opening is at 3 o'clock, and in the evening I got to do the pastor thing, so...
Okay, so we're going to unpack these many things one at a time. And then you had a gala last night?
Yeah, I work for Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, an organization that was started with union partners and Reverend James Lawson, who was actually Dr. King's strategist for the nonviolent movement during the civil rights movement. Yeah, so.
How was that?
Oh, that was good. It was good. He had a couple hundred folks, and yeah. It was.
I mean, Pastor Lawson is he's such a beacon of light. Yeah. I got to interview him one time, and I just felt so honored.
Yeah.
So, and that what an intergenerational alignment, right, between you and Pastor Q, in the liberation theology kind of space.
Yes. You know, we stand on broad shoulders, not just folks like Lawson, but also many of the women who were behind the scenes because we live in a patriarchal society so often.
Yeah, I have noticed that.
You have, huh?
I have noticed that. But it's a big day for you as well. Like you said, opening the Peace and Justice Center.
Yeah, Peace and Healing Center.
Peace and Healing Center is part of, part of bringing well-being to the community. It's part of your mission anyway, but you were selected as one of the spaces where the LA Civil Rights is investing in some very specific work. So talk about what is it that's opening?
Yeah, so, just for context, many years ago when I'm over, I think over 15 or 16 years ago when I lived in the Crenshaw community, we started an organization called the Shaw. We taught music production. I was a little bit fresh out of the music industry, so we taught music production in Crenshaw High, Dorsey, Frederick Douglass Middle School, and West Adams. And eventually we ran out of resources. But when I moved to downtown Los Angeles, we launched a church there 16 years ago in August. It'll be 17 years.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, with the church without walls, and we just have church on the streets every Friday night, feeding folks. So I'm sure we've served millions of dollars worth of food every Friday night for the past 16 years, almost 17 years. And so,
wow, that's a long time. I feel like, although Skid Row has been Skid Row and with the need and the unhoused folks since I moved to LA, you must have seen a huge explosion in the number of unhoused folks or folks that need help during those 16 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, every time there's, this thing about, natural disasters, right? But every time there's a natural disaster coupled with man-made disasters, which are bad policies,
right.
Black folks, become the brunt of most of the negative effects. So, yeah, we've seen Skid Row grow, and we know that Skid Row is about 70% Black.
How do you fund those millions of dollars in food that you're giving away? Because that's more than a notion.
Yeah, well, as the pastor of the Church Without Walls, I for the first 16 years, 15 years, I never received any resources from the church. That's why I work with Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice for the past 10 years, part-time, offered many full-time jobs.
I'm
and
sure.
I was like, no, our folks need us here in Skid Row. We're going to continue to do that. If I can't do that, then I can't take this job, and it was a huge sacrifice, right? Because most pastors are, getting a salary from their churches, and I'm in Skid Row, so we're not,
right.
We
so,
don't have no resources, right? But,
right. So the tithing is low.
Yeah. But we have people who've donated. I've donated some of my own resources, right? Because part-time job, but I got one, right? So and then during the pandemic. We got an influx of resources, and we've been able to do some things that we couldn't do before. Like, we're opening the Peace and Healing Center, but we've spent over, I think, about 50 G's, right, trying to rehab it and everything, and we haven't received any of the resources from the city yet.
So when you say pandemic resources, you're talking about like federal stuff or just donations?
No, we didn't get any federal stuff, just
you're talking
donations
about people
from folks.
Becoming more conscious about what needs to be done.
Yeah, because during the pandemic, we know that folks on the streets were ignored, right? There was no one actually teaching them about COVID and mask and all of that stuff. So that was left to folks like, myself and LA Can and grassroots organizations who were on the ground. So we started doing that. Folks started giving us resources to do that, and we didn't get nearly as much resources as other folks, but we were on the ground. We know what to do with it, right?
Yeah, because I remember early in the pandemic, and some folks still have this, that they thought, oh, well, houseless people are immune to it because nobody, that's unsheltered is getting COVID, and that didn't sound right to me, but that's what a lot of people were, and some still are repeating.
Yeah, well, part of it is that it's harder to catch it when you're outside, but a lot of houseless folks are in close proximity. So all you have to do is breathe on somebody, right?
Right.
So we had to teach them. Folks were wearing masks after about 3 or 4 weeks in because we hit the ground, And so there was more transmission inside of the mission than outside of the mission.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, tell us where exactly the Peace and Healing Center is, and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so the Peace and Healing Center is at 116 East 5th Street in downtown Los Angeles, Skid Row. It is actually in the historic core, which means that's where all the historic buildings are. The building that we're in was the old Leland Hotel, which was built in 1904. And
wow.
And Fifth Street and there's a whole lot of stuff going on with that. That's why we had to spend so much money, because we got permits. There's certain things you can't touch because it's a historic building, which kind of made me think about how we value property more than people, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I ain't really got time to go there this morning, but yeah. So and it's right in Skid Row. It's the hood in Skid Row. We call it the Nickel. So yeah.
Wow. So that is going to be open.
Yeah, we having a press conference there at 9 a.m. And at 3 p.m. we're going to open and give folks a little sneak preview of what's to come. We will be housing the Hip Hop Smoothie Shop, which is a worker-owned co-op, because we know that capitalism can't save us and black capitalism can't save us, right? Can make a few of us wealthy and help a few of us feed our family, but it doesn't raise all ties in our community. We know that. We've had moguls. We've had all kind of folks with resources. We brought in even Nipsey. Nipsey tried to do some good stuff in the community, right? So all of those things are needed, but we also need to create our own justice, right? We need to create our own stuff. We need to reimagine our community outside of the system, because the system keeps giving us the same outcomes. For example, we just signed a city budget, right? They just signed a city budget, approved a city budget where LAPD gets $3.1 billion, and for houselessness, we're getting $1 billion, right? So we see what's our priority, and our safety is not at the top of the list. So
well, a lot of stuff we could dive into right there, but Hip Hop Smoothie Shop will exists inside of the healing.
So it's not going to be
healing center.
Yeah, I mean we'll have smoothies for folks today, but it's not going to be like open to the public today, because we're still waiting on the health department. We're waiting on health permits and all that stuff.
Okay, so you'll have to let us know when it's open to the public then, because I know some of those things can be a process.
Yeah. But we're close. We're real close, because we've been working on it for a while. So probably in the next week we'll have it.
What else happens besides the smoothies inside the center?
So we have the smoothies. We've got a little healing room where folks can go in and folks can meditate. Folks can chill. They can, there's going to be sound healing. We're going to be doing music therapy. Man, there's so much stuff that's going to be happening in the Peace and Healing Center, right? It's economic. It focuses on economic healing, social, spiritual, emotional, all of that stuff. So
in the heart of Skid Row.
In the heart of Skid Row, and it's a nice space. So when you come in outside of the elements, you feel a little different.
I hope there's some air in there, because I feel like we're gonna have a crazy summer that's gonna be so hot.
Yeah, our AC is brand new.
Because it sounds like I'm being petty, but in California, people die from.
Oh yeah,
from heat.
Absolutely.
Every year,
Well, we die from cold and heat, right? Because we have 5 people dying on the street each and every day.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, 5 houseless folks die on the street every day in Los Angeles.
And some people in houses die.
Come on.
Without the air, especially elders, and then you got folks dying. Right. From, like you said, from heat and cold, and it's very much underreported.
Yeah, well, part of the reason we wanted to do the Peace and Healing Center, because creating justice stands for advancing justice through creative expressions. So we're also a social justice organization,
right?
And one of the things we're going to do is be advocating for the folks inside, because folks don't know that folks think Skid Row are just houseless folks, but we got 9,000 folks who are housed, and they're housed in what's called SROs, single residency occupancies. So what happens is when you go into an SRO, you look at an SRO, it's a little smaller than a jail cell with a microwave and a bed, right? And folks say, well, at least they're not outside. One of the things I spoke about, I was talking to the manager of the building that we're in, because above us there are SROs above our space, and it's long stairs up. And if you know Skid Row, a lot of the folks in Skid Row are near and elderly, right? They're, some, and I don't want to say 40 years old, but when you begin to get north of 40 and 50 and 60, you can't walk up those stairs. Right. And as a person who's a personal trainer by trade, I know that. Right. So I said to her, elderly folks can't live in here. She goes, you'd be surprised. And what that made me think is that I'm not surprised, because folks are going to try to do whatever they can.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no
You got to do what you got to do. Right. But there's no like, oh, yeah, we have to figure out how to put in an elevator. It's just, they're going to work. You'll be surprised.
Exactly. Which is always the mentality. Right?
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I mean, and I think, to your point, a room with a microwave and stairs that you have trouble getting up and down does not lend itself to a fresh and healthy diet or getting, necessarily having heat or air that's going to keep you safe.
Right. That's why we're saying we're hoping to be a model for what it's like to take care of folks. One of our first campaigners that it's called We Must Love and Protect One Another, right? And so getting that from Asada Shakur.
Yeah,
right?
That sounded awful familiar.
Yeah, right? So we must love and protect one another. And I don't think we focus on that enough, right? I think we focus on fighting for justice, and that's great because we need to do that, but I don't think we focus on the loving and protecting one another. And even in our public policies, right? Oftentimes folks just trying to get folks off the street or just trying to get rid of the problem, but people aren't problems, right? We try to get rid of the problem, so we create all of these policies and all of these issues, all of these things, and we dance around the issue, but we don't really address the issue. So,
we just have 30 seconds before news, traffic, and sports, but you've referenced a few times here problematic policies and how we are skirting around the issues rather than dealing with the heart of the issues. So I don't know if you want to, after news, traffic, and sports, I don't know if you want to specifically call out what those policies are, or if we need to focus on what we ought to be doing, right?
Yeah.
If we were not just skirting around the problem, nibbling around the edges, or putting a PR Band-Aid on a human challenge. We'll address that when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
I'm Julius White. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison over his role in the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. It's the most severe punishment so far of over 1,000 cases stemming from the attack. Meantime, the president of Ukraine can add surprise graduation speaker to his resume. Volodymyr Zelensky gave the commencement address via live stream Thursday morning to the graduating class at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. And a study suggests women with irregular menstrual cycles may be at higher risk of cardiovascular disease. According to the Journal of the American Heart Association, cycles that are shorter or longer than normal are associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease and atrial fibrillation. I'm Julius White on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
In Brea on the 57 northbound at Lambert Road got a stall in the right lane of that off-ramp. In Commerce, 710 southbound before Washington Boulevard. Still got that wreck in the center divider area. In Anaheim, 5 southbound at Brookhurst Street got a crash in the center divider as well. It's stop and go from Beach Boulevard. And in Culver City, 405 southbound at Braddock Drive got a stall big rig partially blocking the right lane. It's slow from Olympic Boulevard.
Need an accident attorney by your side? All you got to do is call the accident guys.
Injured in a car accident or at work? Call the accident guys to speak with a real expert attorney for a free consultation.
Is this the dagger?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Denver Nuggets still don't know who they're going to play in the NBA Finals. The Boston Celtics stayed alive in the Eastern Conference Finals with a 13-point win over Miami. Miami now has a 3-2 lead in the series. Boston is already favored by 2.5 points in Game 6. The pressure is squarely on the Heat to regroup. Game 6 is Saturday night in Miami, 5:30 tip on TNT. The NBA Competition Committee is considering giving a technical free throw to opposing teams when a player tries to flop. Players flopping in an effort to draw offensive fouls is becoming a nuisance for the league office in New York. The NBA will test the potential new rule at the Summer League in Las Vegas in July. The LA Sparks suffered their 11th straight loss to the Las Vegas Aces. Aces guard Jackie Young had a game-high 30 points. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America.
The story of Emmett Till and his mother is a story of a family's promise and loss and a nation's reckoning with hate, violence, and abuse of power. It's a story that was seared into our memory and our conscience, the nation's conscience, when Mrs. Till insisted that an open casket for her murdered and maimed 14-year-old son. She said, "Let the people see what I've seen." The reason the world saw what she saw was because of another hero in this story, the black press. Jet Magazine, the Chicago Defender, and other black radio and newspapers were unflinching and brave in making sure America saw what she saw. Ida B. Wells once said, and I quote, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon the wrongs."
Turning the light of truth upon the wrongs. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
In our community, mental health struggles can sometimes go unnoticed. The suicide rate among Black youth has risen faster than any other ethnic group. Only 1 in 3 African Americans who need mental health care receives it. African American women are only half as likely as their Caucasian counterparts to seek professional mental health services. Even those who guide us spiritually can sometimes face their own challenges. 45% of pastors say they've experienced depression or burnout to the extent they need to take a leave of absence from ministry. As people of faith, it's time to acknowledge it's okay not to be okay. You can pray and get help. Visit normalizehelp.org for more information and resources. Join us in raising mental health awareness in our community. Funded by the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health and the Champion Counseling Center of Faithful Central Bible Church.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, you, your family, and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here for KBLA Talk 1580. We're live in Los Angeles at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. And I'm speaking to some of the attendees today to see why it was so important for them to be here.
Yeah, this is Lathan and Tyler. Main reason that's very important for me to be here is just to leave a legacy for my kids. Black wealth, generational wealth is what we need in our community, you know. Oh, Chase, someone has to take the lead. They're showing, big business like Chase cares, and they're putting their money where their mouth is at. So it's good to see, big institution like Chase, giving a lifting hand, to the community, and you got to respect that. It makes me want to bank with Chase, and give them another look. If I go to another institution, I actually see what Chase is doing for the community.
That's right, Chase is doing their part to help advance Black wealth. For more money support, tune in every day from 12 to 2 to KBLA Talk 1580's Midday Money Chain, right here.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
And Pastor Q is my guest, the Church Without Walls, the Row. his ministry, but also the. Are you executive director? Is that the title of Creating Justice?
Yeah, founder, executive director.
And now the Healing and Peace and Healing Center is opening today, 9 o'clock press conference, 3 p.m. Check it out. It'll be ramping up, right? Because you got to comply with all the things.
Yeah, so what can you do today? You can come in and get some sound healing today. Right?
Okay.
You can get into the Peace and Healing Room.
See the space.
Yeah, exactly. And you've never been to a coffee shop where you have a Peace and Healing Room. So come on now.
Right. And so before news, traffic, and sports, I asked you about solutions, and I asked you about the bad policies and where we are now and why we are where we are now. You know, there's a famous talking point. Conservatives are always telling me the cities are run by Democrats, and yet they're decaying and crumbling.
Right. Well, first of all, I mean, I don't know if they ever heard of the Homestead Act, right? I don't know if they ever heard of GI Bill, right? All of these things were, the Homestead Act was where the government gave resources to white folks, right? And it was at a time when we had these restrictive policies that black folks couldn't get any, right?
Yeah.
Or even when the soldiers came back and they got the GI Bill. That's decades and decades of acquired equity, right, and wealth, right? When we look at what happened at Bruce Beach, right, we see a living example of that, right? So all of these policies bring us to where we are today, and we're always trying to put a little bit of money here and say we want to get people off the street. But when you get it, like we were talking about, people in those SROs, they don't have any air conditioners in those SROs, right? People are seen as projects. So what we try to do at the Healing Center, one of the things we're going to address is that, you know, here's my pastor's hat. Oftentimes we say, sometimes an idle mind is the devil's playground, right? So people don't have things to do, then it's kind of like working out. You understand, when you work out, if you don't work out a certain muscle, it begins to atrophy, right? So same thing with our mind, same thing with our spirit, same thing with I feel with our soul. So what we're trying to do is give folks positive things that they can do to actually help them to remember their value, right? Because folks are valued. So all the music therapy and music classes that we're going to be doing, and healing classes, and all of the stuff that we're going to do, and the sound healing and all of that stuff is it's not just getting people off the street and putting them in a room and forgetting and go, okay, we've addressed the issue. That's not really addressing the issue of houselessness. We've got to deal with the person, not just the building.
Okay, so when you talk about solutions, that's part of it. It's getting to human. I mean, it makes sense when we look at our enslavement. It was the dehumanization that allowed us to be brutalized and exploited in that way.
That's right.
And so it sounds like you're talking about the dehumanization of unhoused people.
And folks were dehumanized before they were unhoused, right? That's how we end up in this place. And so that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to address. Not make Skid Row a containment zone like we have, right? And we are continuing the same policy. We know this is not just something that's happening on the micro level. It's happening on a macro level. America spends 40% of the world's budget on war, right? So America's military budget is 40% of the entire world's military budget, right?
That's insane. Yeah, well, that's a refrain around here for me, because we don't have money for this, we don't have money for that, we don't have money to help unhoused people, we don't have money for migrants, we don't have money. But right now they're arguing over a debt ceiling, but there's no talk about curtailing our military spending.
That's right.
It's all meant to be done on the backs of the poor. No, the rich people are not going to give back their tax cuts, and no, the military is not going to give back one single tank. We're going to take your Social Security, and and that's how we're balanced. We're going to make people that are on Medicaid or Medicare work. They're on that because either they are disabled, poor, or they already worked and they're retired. So that's how we balance the budget.
We can always blame the poor for our failed policies.
Blame the poor. And then, blaming the poor is one thing, but you want to blame the poor and then tax the poor.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. So It's funny. You said, okay, we have the Skid Row coffee and we have the hip hop smoothie shop. As soon as we jump through all health department hoops, that'll be open. That'll be running. And we can check in, I'm sure, on your social.
Next week, yeah.
Social media. It's Creating Justice.
Creating Justice LA.
Creating Justice LA. But you also mentioned that these are cooperatives. And I was talking before you got here about recycling black dollars. You know, go try to keep the Compton Community Garden open. Buy ads on KBLA.
Right.
Go patronize black businesses.
Right.
But it sounds like you did say that's not enough.
That's not
so
enough.
What is the model that you're trying to create?
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, is it a model within capitalism? Are you talking about socialism?
Right.
Are you talking about communism?
I call it Robin Hood. We're going to take money out of capitalism and put it in cooperative, right? I mean, in some ways, it's the system, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. You're not going to get away from the capitalist system, right?
Well, some people
say
they are.
Right. but in reality, when you put
you end up like China
exactly.
or Russia with a bunch of robber barons.
Well, again,
oligarchs.
Exactly. Here in America.
But it doesn't mean you can't do it right. I mean, I always felt like that a mixed system would be ideal.
Right.
Which we actually do have. It's just we don't do it.
We don't do it well.
Ultimately well. Because we do have a socialized police department, fire department. We have socialism in our schools. Yeah. We don't necessarily do that super well, but
probably more of a democratic republic because you have a small few controlling the police department.
Right, but okay, well, let's use fire as an example because police has got too many issues.
Exactly.
If we use fire department as an example, and actually that is probably one place where we do socialism well, right? Everybody pays in through their tax dollars, and then when your house is on fire, the fire department comes. They don't say, have you paid your fire department bill? They don't check to see what your income level is. They come and put out the fire.
Right. The Skid Row Fire Department is actually one of the most busiest fire departments in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, but it makes sense.
Yeah. The one on 7th and 8th Street.
Folks trying to keep warm, folks trying to cook, using fire.
Or folks having health issues, right? Because we know at one time.
Oh, yeah, the paramedics.
Exactly. Even at one time, even the hospitals would be dropping folks off to Skid Row. I've seen them do it myself.
Really?
Oh yeah, they'd drop people off in their gowns
and
the street with their IVs.
With the IVs.
With the IVs.
And we wonder why people are dying on the street.
Come on. Yeah.
But again, I mean, back to this mixed situation, like if we had Medicare for all, that would be like a part of socialism, just like the fire department. But you could still be, Jay-Z and
do whatever you want.
Make as much money as you want, get your $200 million mansion. To me, that's more fair because I'm not saying the state is going to control everything. You can go but everybody should have housing, universal basic income, a fire department, a decent school.
Right. And the way a cooperative works is that one member, one vote. So the workers own the organization. The way we're setting it up is that there's A shares and B shares. So the workers are going to be the A shares, which are the primary shares. We're going to be, the nonprofit is going to be the B shares because we're the one helping to start it. And so we're only going to have one vote. They're going to have each worker is going to have one vote. That's going to be the board of the organization. We make the decisions together.
I mean, to me, if we could get our democracy to one person, one vote, that would be a start.
Come on.
Right, we'd have to get rid of the electoral college. We'd have to change the allocation of senators to match the number of people in the states.
Right.
That would be a huge, without even changing systems, that would change the system.
Right.
Because the poor people would have more say.
That's a public policy, I guess, Mount Rushmore to try to move. And I think that's why on a micro level, that's why we're trying to do it.
Right.
With the Peace and Healing Center to show examples, because oftentimes we say, well, we need to change this, we need to change this, but we never give people a tangible example of what needs to be done. Right? Somebody said to me one time, if you want to make an old model obsolete, you create a new model that makes the old model obsolete.
I mean, Black Panther Party, when they started, the free breakfast and free lunch programs, now it's very common in schools.
Exactly.
They showed an example, and then the system adopted it because they knew that if they don't, the people are going to say, "Oh, well, let's go with Black Panthers because they, at least they'll feed our kids." Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. We're talking with Pastor Q of the Row, the Church Without Walls, of Creating Justice LA, and a few more organizations. And you're invited in, KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
Reparations Task Force concludes its 15th meeting and votes on its final report, suggesting that upward of $800 billion is owed to Black Californians who are descendants of slaves. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. The 9-member task force finalized its recommendations for compensating Black Californians for state laws, policies, and practices that have disproportionately and negatively affected African Americans. The final report, which will be available to the public, is expected to be about 1,000 pages long. Among the recommendations made, the state of California should issue a formal apology for the perpetration of gross human rights violations and the genocide of Africans who were enslaved and their descendants. The implied admission of guilt should mitigate the harm historically inflicted on the Black community, according to members of the task force. U.S. Representative Barbara Lee says reparations are not a luxury for our people, but a human right long overdue for millions of Americans.
On Saturday, May 27th and Sunday, May 28th, join Pastor Shep Crawford and other local houses of worship for the Apology Tour. Details about the Saturday, May 27th press conference and the Sunday, May 28th walkout are available at theapologytour.com. The Apology Tour is a united effort to engage the community and serve the least among us by tearing down the walls of division, misunderstanding, and tension between the church and the community. The Apology Tour helps to address the impact of the pandemic, which created a greater distance between the beloved community and the Black church. The Apology Tour invites participating local ministries to walk out of the building and into the community for 1 to 4 hours on Sunday, May 28th at 12 noon to provide services and offer giveaways reflective of the community's needs assessment and priorities. For more information or to join this call to action, please visit theapologytour.com, changing the community through the spirit of God's love.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, I was talking with Pastor Q. It's on Instagram, Creating Justice LA. Does that have an underscore or something?
Yeah,
I feel like it does.
Underscore.
Yeah, afterwards.
Well, yeah, my own personal IG is Creating Justice.
Okay.
It's Create Justice, and then the nonprofit is Creating Justice LA underscore. They both have an underscore. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why. But I was talking to you off the air about how I was looking at this Washington Post article talking about seniors and how it's the fastest growing segment of the unhoused.
Come on.
And that a lot of shelters are just not set up to help.
No.
Some of these folks need medical care, like you said. They have a colostomy bag, or they've got something going on that requires care.
Yeah. Shelters do not require you to be equitable. They don't address the equity issue, right? In Skid Row, we said years ago that houselessness was a racial justice issue. So when you look at the numbers, you know, right? So shelters, I've been saying we need to build housing for the past 17 years while being on Skid Row. We need to build housing. Could you imagine how much housing they would have built if they would have made it a priority, right? To build those housing. Folks do what they want to do, right? They do what they want to do. They do what they care about.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? They will make it happen. That's why they care about the military. And our debt ceiling isn't rising because of our social safety net. They're rising because of the military. Anytime they want to increase the military spending, they don't argue about getting a debt, getting a credit line to do that. That's why it's rising, because they get credit lines for the military.
So back to this idea about, what we should be doing. I know you're watching what the mayor is doing closely in Los Angeles right now. And I've heard both praise and critique of Safer Inside. And you yourself were critiquing earlier in the show the budget, where we have $3 billion for LAPD, but $1 billion for helping people get unsheltered. What kinds of policies, what kinds of programs, what kind of spending works?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing we have to do is we have to invert the budget, right? Jesus said, here goes the pastor again, Jesus says that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. If you really want to deal with we've got to think about our budget from an equitable perspective, right? So less money for all the stuff we've been given money to, and making a priority, and make the things we have deprioritized for generations the priority, right? That's the first thing we need to do. And folks, and then we need to understand that in our society, there are two groups of people that feel safe with policing and people that feel unsafe. There's no one in this society that can argue that black people have a right not to like police. There are black people who like police, even in spite of. But those that don't, no one can argue that that's due to the trauma that our communities have faced. And that's the only system that we have in our society. We need to create new systems in order for us to do that, especially now that the LA Civil Rights and Human Rights Department is in place, actually advocated for by the Black Workers Center, who will be part of the press conference this morning, talking about how that department came to be because of our organizing on the ground. I had to call them and say, yo, y'all got to come through so folk know what it is, right? They don't think that the city just came up with this, but they know that we fought for this on the ground and we've been fighting for this, right?
Yeah. And it's back to when we fight, we win, and just, throwing our hands up is not the answer.
Yeah, we can't, I mean, sometimes make you want to holler, but after you holler, you still got to work.
We're talking with Pastor Q, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
The party of the summer is back. The Hollywood Bowl Jazz Festival returns on June 17th and 18th. With an incredible lineup curated by Kamasi Washington and Herbie Hancock. See Kamasi himself, Belle Biv DeVoe, West Coast Get Down with Raphael Sadiq and Leon Bridges, St. Paul and the Broken Bones, Samara Joy, Diggable Planets, Poncho Sanchez, Aziza, The Soul Rebels with Big Frida, and many more. Hosted by Arsenio Hall. Get your tickets now at HollywoodBowl.com. Hollywood Bowl, forever summer.
KBLA Talk 1580 stands for Unity and Healing. African Focus Incorporated is a nonprofit organization based in California that focuses on the growth and well-being of Africans all around the world. Their mission is to promote the well-being of people of African descent through knowledge and appreciation of one another by building a bridge of love and understanding. African Focus Incorporated strives for cultural, educational, and economic growth. They're the organization behind the African Family Induction Ceremony, African Goodwill Awards, African Focus Trailblazer Tours, African Dance Competition, and Showcase Los Angeles, Family Day, Good News Windows Microfinance Project, and more. To volunteer, travel with African Focus, or to attend one of their community building events, please call 310-676-7730. That's 310-676-7300. Or visit AfricanFocus.org. This is a diaspora-wide community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Meet Joe A, Joe B, and Joe C.
What's up?
3 everyday Joes perfecting their banking with Chase. Joe A is locking his lost debit card with the Chase mobile app. Joe B is cruising toward his new ride with AutoSave. And Joe C's Chase banker is helping him budget to go back to school. Tools that help protect. Support for what's next. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, Make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Messaging and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
Pastor Q is with us, and he is doing a lot of things, including today, opening the Peace and Healing Center in the heart of Skid Row, downtown Los Angeles.
The nickel, we call it.
At 9 a.m., the press conference. I'm assuming everyone's invited. 116 East 5th Street is where it is, right?
Yes. And there's parking on Los Angeles, which is, between 5th Street and 6th Street. And then there's also parking on the north side. And then there's also parking on Main Street, which is the west side, on the north and on the south side, on the left side. So either way, if you're heading downtown, it's on the left side.
When you, earlier days, you were a hip-hop artist, right?
Yeah, that's what they tell me.
With hit songs and everything.
Yeah. Victim of the ghetto. And it's amazing that I'm in Skid Row, right?
Yeah, I mean, right. You predicted.
Yeah, well, Victim of the Ghetto was about my personal life as a neighborhood pharmaceutical dealer. So
what I was going to ask you, it kind of fits. Do you ever think, if you would have you ever think you watched Jay-Z get a $200 million house with Beyonce, most expensive house ever in the history of California? Do you ever think, man, I should have stayed in hip-hop? I could be rolling deep like that.
Well, when we were growing up, we wanted to be moguls, right? We wanted to be billionaires. That was, that was our hip hop thing. They wouldn't let us get no money, so God allowed us to create hip hop, and then hip hop became lucrative. I remember when folks used to say, "What y'all doing? That's jungle music. That's garbage. What do you? That's not music, right?" All our elders, and we'd be like, "Whatever. We gonna do what we do, right?" And so. Wanted to become a billionaire, wanted to become a millionaire. But after doing this work, I realized from me, not for anybody else, but from me, it is idiotic for me to want to be a billionaire, to want to buy a $200 million home. Shout out to Jay-Z. He took advantage of capitalism, right? And he was one of the few in our communities. Think about it, without hip hop, would Jay-Z being where he is today? I'm not sure, right? But shout out to him. He took advantage of capitalism. But at the same time, for me, I would rather have, I'd say maybe 10 or 12 millionaires, right? So that folks can afford homes. I would rather have, I always say I'd rather have 100 millionaires than 2 billionaires, right? So, it's all about equity for me. And so I'd rather be doing what I'm doing. I feel like the richest man in the world. Well,
Pastor Q, thank you so much for stopping by on such a busy day. Folks, you can go see him at 9 o'clock this morning at 116 East 5th Street, or also at 3 o'clock this afternoon when the Peace and Healing Center opens its doors.
That's what it is.
Congratulations and thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me. Always.
Great time to call me, 800-920-1580, right after news, traffic, and sports. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Ray Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. All 123 federal prisons in the United States are in need of maintenance. That's according to the newest report released by the Department of Justice. In 3 prisons, conditions are so bad, the facilities had to be closed. The new report reveals the cost to fix all of the country's facilities is actually closer to $2 billion. Basketball star and broadcaster Shaquille O'Neal is facing a class action lawsuit over the collapse of FTX. The New Jersey native was served while he was broadcasting a Miami Heat Celtics playoff game in Miami. The complaint alleges O'Neal and other celebrities defrauded FTX investors by appearing in advertisements for the cryptocurrency company. O'Neal had allegedly been dodging the legal documents for months. And that's the latest from the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Need an accident attorney by your side? All you got to do is call the accident guys.
Injured in a car accident or at work?
Call the accident guys to speak with a real expert attorney for a free consultation.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Denver Nuggets still don't know who they're going to play in the NBA Finals. The Boston Celtics stayed alive in the Eastern Conference Finals with a 13-point win over Miami. Miami now has a 3-2 lead in the series. Boston is already favored by 2.5 points in Game 6. The pressure is squarely on the Heat to regroup. Game 6 is Saturday night in Miami, 5:30 tip on TNT. The NBA Competition Committee is considering giving a technical free throw to opposing teams when a player tries to flop. Players flop